This week we're going to start to look at web mashups. So in previous iterations of this unit we actually had an assignment that was entirely a web mashup, but what we're going to do now is we're still going to teach you this, but we're going to say you can optionally use this as a way of adding functionality to your prototype if you wish. So depending on what form your prototype takes, this may be more relevant to some than others, but I think it's still really worthwhile learning, because if you're going to work anywhere in the vicinity of web design and web development, then this is really the direction that the web has taken. So having some understanding of how to interact with data and APIs across the web, I think is going to be really useful information to have. So before I even talk about mashups, I'll just take a step back and talk about data visualization in general. So mashups, I sit them within the broader context of data visualization, and the reason that we visualize data in the first place, as demonstrated by this simple image. So in this case we have the same data. We have it as a table of numbers on the left, and on the right we have it as a simple line graph. So does anyone want to propose why we might represent it one way or the other? What are the benefits of doing it each way?
The graph would be quite self-explanatory, like in a way you can just want to get out of its meaning quickly.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
The graph is better at showing the overall picture
as
compared to the other one, which is more specific.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think those both pretty good answers. So with the graph, so if we're looking at this at a glance, the graph is a lot better at telling us very quickly what the overall trend is or relationships within the data. However, the table of numbers is a lot better at giving us very specific values. We could derive one from the other. We could look at the one on the left and then interpret in our heads what the trend is. And similarly, we could measure values off the graph and get somewhat of an approximation of the particular numbers at each of the data points. But each one is better at doing a particular thing. So the numbers are better at giving us detailed information. The abstract graph is better at giving us at a glance an idea of the overall trend. So what we're really talking about here is abstraction of information. And when I'm talking about abstraction, I'm talking about this kind of thing. When I say abstract, I'm not necessarily referring to the abstract movement of art, although it does apply. What I'm saying is when we abstract something, we take certain principles or qualities about that and then focus on those and then ignore the other details that aren't relevant. So in this image here we have three different representations of a person or of people. From the left we have a less abstract, to the right we have the more abstract. So in the less abstract representation we get more details. We can see what a more realistic granular version of this object looks like, and as we go further towards the right we discard all of that excess detail and all we focus on is one specific thing, in this case gender. Okay, and so we end up having a more abstract and more symbolic representation of this particular object. Okay, and the whole reason that this works is there's a lot of research behind this, but you can summarize in the fact that the human brain is wired for visual perception. It's wired to see visual patterns in things. So I think that's just important to keep in the back of your mind when you're working on any sort of data visualization and when you're working on any sort of visual interface. So whether or not you use these web mashup techniques for creating your prototype, you're going to have some form of data or information in your application anyway. So keep this in the back of your mind when you're deciding how you're going to represent this data or this information to the user in your visual interfaces. Okay, so what is a mashup? So I've just pulled this definition, slightly modified from Wikipedia, which I've felt to be a fairly good definition. So in web development, a mashup is generally a web application that combines data and/or functionality from two or more sources to create a new service. The term mashup implies easy, fast integration, frequently using open APIs and data sources to produce results that were not the original reason for producing the raw source data. Okay, so my favorite example to use as the quintessential mashup that I think everyone is familiar with is something like Google Maps. So Google Maps at its very base mapping level is just a mapping system. It shows you a map, but then over the iterations of its development, they've added all of these extra layers that you can overlay. So you have things like satellite data, traffic, photos, webcams, Wikipedia articles, all of this other sort of stuff, three-dimensional models. Okay, all of this stuff combined into one interface, and a lot of these things are from separate services that possibly never intended to have any sort of mapping service integrated with them. Any website that you see that uses Google Maps, let's say a real estate website for overlaying real estate images of particular real estate on Google Maps, then that there is another mashup. So you've got multiple different data sources that weren't necessarily created with the intent to go together, and then putting them together to create something new, and a new service. Okay, this is another one which is called We Feel Fine, and what this does is it harvests information from Twitter, and then it analyzes them. It analyzes them based on various demographics, so gender, age, and then it also looks at the location of the tweet and pulls in what the weather was like at that particular place when the person tweeted this. And it categorizes tweets by various different emotional expressions. So what it can then do there is draw some sort of conclusions about the relationships between time, place, weather, and how people are feeling or expressing themselves. Okay, and then it represents it in a visual interactive interface which emphasizes, mainly based on the scale of the various different visual items, all of those things that are important to it in drawing relationships between the data. Okay, so this is something that you could represent all this data in a massive spreadsheet if you want, but it wouldn't allow you to draw these conclusions or these relationships as quickly or as easily as displaying it in a visual interface like this. Okay, so this is just an example just to show that mashup information doesn't have to all be purely virtual or digital. There are mashups that exist that integrate with real-world sensors. So on the left here we have a twittering toilet, which sends a tweet every time that the toilet is flushed. So whether that's a novel thing or it's actually useful for monitoring water use or something, who knows? The one on the right is again hooked up to some simple electronics which detects the moisture content in the soil of this pot plant, and it will tweet its owner whenever it needs watering. And I guess you could say that any time you're integrating weather data, you're at some point along the line using physical sensors there as well. Okay, so we can look at what makes a good mashup. There's a website here called mashupawards.com, and this is good for two reasons. What they do is they aggregate various different mashups that they find and then award what they think are the good ones. So this is, on the one hand, a good place to find some mashups that people have done. On the other hand, it's they also list their judging criteria for what they think makes a good mashup. So things like uniqueness, creativity, utility, the quality of the original content, and the user experience. Okay, so the first question that we usually ask, or usually ask yourself when you go about creating a mashup, is where am I going to source this data from? So there's a lot of different ways that you can get information out of various different places around the web. One of the most simple ways is by using website RSS feeds. So you'll find pretty much any blog or any news site, something like that, will have an RSS feed. An RSS feed is designed so that you can subscribe to the content from a website and view it in a reader, or subscribe to multiple websites' content and view them all aggregated in a reader so that you can get that content without having to visit the individual websites. So we can pull information about website content in from those. Then there's also web APIs. So API stands for Application Programming Interface, and these are even more flexible interfaces for retrieving data from various different web resources. So you'll find a lot of the big social websites have APIs for accessing their data, and one we'll look at when I do an example is we'll look at using the YouTube API for searching videos, but there's lots of them as well. If you actually click on this link, this takes you to a website called the Programmable Web, which is another good website all about mashups, and it lists a whole bunch of websites that actually have APIs that you can interface with for accessing their information. Okay, so lots and lots and lots and lots of them. Okay, and then you can also even use things like a lot of government organizations and things like that have spreadsheets of data available online, and you can even read in those things. So things like the Australian Bureau of Statistics, Gapminder is a website which has a whole lot of UN demographic information on it in the form of spreadsheets. The Australian government puts a lot of its data, census data and all that sort of thing online as well, and you can always upload your own spreadsheets as well. Okay, so there's lots of different official ways of getting data out of websites, and then you've got some options if there aren't official channels as well. There's things like this page2rss.com, which is a service for taking a web page and attempting to generate an RSS feed based on its content. And then you can also, if you really want, do what's called data scraping, which is where you simply read in the HTML page, the content of the HTML page, and then parse it and then extract the bits of information that you're interested in yourself. So obviously, if there's intended ways of accessing the information, that's going to be easier for us. So so these are the kind of things that you're probably going to want to focus on. So in terms of building a mashup, you can go about it any way you want. You could code everything from scratch if you really want, and that gives you the most flexibility. But there are also some really useful tools that will do a lot of the heavy lifting for us. So a few of these are listed here. It's Yahoo Pipes, Google Fusion Tables, IBM Mashup Center, and one called WaveMaker. The one we're going to look at and focus on is Yahoo Pipes, mainly because I feel it offers the most flexibility in creating mashups. And so Yahoo Pipes, it's called Yahoo Pipes because their metaphor for creating data mashups is to think of it like plumbing. So so this is what the builder interface for Yahoo Pipes looks like, and this is quite a complex example. But what you have is all of these little boxes which they call modules, and you have some modules that pull data in from other sources. Then you have some modules which perform operations on that data, whether it be sorting, filtering, splitting them, combining them. Okay, and then it goes through a bunch of these and then finally ends up at the pipe output. And these are all connected by pipes here. So you can imagine the data like water, and it flows from one module to another. And as it gets to each module, the data is somehow modified, depending on the nature of that module. It's passed to another module, something else happens, and so on, until you finally get to the end, and you've got the data in whatever format that you actually want to use it for. So we'll be looking at that. So to use Yahoo Pipes, you either need a Yahoo account or you can sign in with Facebook or your Google ID, but you will need one of those three things in order to use it, because you need to have an account, because when you create a pipe it saves it to your account, so you can go log back in and edit it and publish it and so forth. Okay, I've got a bunch of links to documentation here. There's the official Yahoo Pipes documentation, and then a few other links I've found which I think are pretty good general overviews, and some more specific tutorials of how to use Yahoo Pipes. I'm going to demonstrate now a couple of different things you can do with it. I don't really expect you to learn and have an encyclopedic knowledge of everything that Yahoo Pipes can do. I hopefully just want to give you an idea of the kinds of things that it can do, and then if you determine that that's something that might be worthwhile in developing your prototype, then you can go ahead and attempt that. Okay, so I'll jump over to the Yahoo Pipes website. The URL is pipes.yahoo.com/pipes. Don't feel like you have to follow along and do this as I do it. I'm screen recording, so you can go back and watch it. And I'll probably be going reasonably fast. But as I said, I mainly just want to give you an idea of the kinds of things that Yahoo Pipes can do, and I'll do my best to explain what I'm doing and why I'm doing it as I go along. Okay, so this is the Yahoo Pipes website. There's the link to the documentation there. What you'll notice if you click on the browse link here is anyone who creates a pipe has the ability to publish it, so anyone else can use it. So you can see all of these pipes are listed here, and they're also categorized by the type of data that they use, tags, the data sources, and the types of modules that they use, for example. So this is a good this is another good way of seeing what other people have done and giving you an idea of the kinds of things that it can achieve. Let's just have a look at see if this does anything. Oh, it's not very useful. Did I?
Yeah, you run an iPhones and then you had like 200 to 1,000.
No, I think it's. Oh, hang on. Oh, there we go. That's not a good example though. Only returns one result. I'll try and find something better. Okay, so we'll look at this one as an example. So this pipe is called U.S. population by state, and this reads in census data and then lists on a map the different states in the order of what their population is. So we've got California as number one there. So you can go in and look at any publicly published pipe, and it looks like this. So this is one view here. This is what I'll refer to as the pipe's front-end interface. You'll notice that depending on the type of data, it offers you it offers you up to three different, it can offer you up to three different ways of viewing this data. If there is location information in here, then it will offer you a map view, and then by default it will always offer you a list view here as well. So it actually does nothing. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so this is a front-end view. We can have a look at how this is built by clicking on the View Source link. Okay, and we can see a bunch of modules here, which I won't necessarily go through in detail, but essentially it's pulling in a spreadsheet here, and then using that data to output a feed that has location data, which ultimately gets displayed on a map. And then sorting by population there, I imagine. Okay, but the point there is you can go and look at the results of and how any public pipe is built. You can also, if you want, clone any publicly available pipe. So if you find one that does something very similar to what you need it to do, you can copy it to your own account and then go and modify it. You can also include any other pipes within your own pipe as well, and I'll show you that in a little bit. Okay, but what I'm really interested in is creating my own pipe here. So there's this section called My Pipes, which lists all the pipes that you've created. I've not created any on this account, so it's empty here. To create a new pipe, I just click this link up here. Okay, and because it's the first time, it's giving me links to a couple of tutorials for building a pipe, so it's fine. You can have a look at those if you want. They may be useful. But I'm just going to dismiss that. Okay, so I'm going to do two different pipes today. I'm going to start with a simple one and then do a slightly more complex one. So I'll explain first of all a little bit about this interface here. So this is the editor interface for creating a pipe. You've got your work area here, and over on the left here you've got all of your different modules that you can use. So these are split up into various different categories, and I'll go through those as I use the modules from them. So the first category here, sources, is all of the modules that will grab data from somewhere and bring it into your pipe. So you've got things like the fetch feed module here. So if you have the URL of an RSS feed, you can simply put it into there and it will pull in all the data from that RSS feed into this pipe for you. Now for my first example, I'm going to use this Flickr module here. So this Flickr module actually interfaces with the Flickr API to allow you to, without much effort, search for images on Flickr, and also specify that they're geotagged near a particular location. So each module looks like this. You've got sometimes inputs, okay, these things here, and then you've also got an output. And what you do is you connect up the output of one module to the input of another. The final module in the chain is always this pipe output, so we always have to make sure that eventually it hooks up to that there, and you just do that by clicking and dragging. Now each of these modules will have a little question mark icon here. That's really useful for figuring out what the module actually does. If you click that, you'll notice down in the left hand corner here that it comes up with a summary of what the module does, and then also gives me two links. Is that a question or just stretching? No? Okay. It also gives me two links. So the first link is always a link to a completed example of a pipe using that particular module. And the second link is a link directly to the pipe's documentation page on that particular module, which gives you more detailed information about it. So that's probably the first port of call when you want detailed information about how to use any particular module. Okay, so I'll enter in some information into this now. So the inputs here are basically what I want to search for, how many items I want to return, and optionally a location. And then finally here is a Flickr API key. Now the old version of this Flickr module didn't actually require the API key because the Flickr API didn't used to require it. Now it does. So you'll find that quite often any website that offers an API will want you to register for an API key. There's almost always free, but they just want you to do it so that they can track, so they can basically track that your application is using their API. So that's usually pretty easy. If I was going to do this, I'd just Google Flickr API key. There we go, first result takes me a page where I can apply for a key. Okay, so again, you need to make sure that you have an account, and you sign in, go through that process, and it will give you an API key. Now, to save a bit of time, I've already done that, and if you want to do this example, I've pasted the API key that it gave me here, but this is what it will usually look like. A long string of characters that uniquely identifies your application. So I'll copy that there and paste it into the API key field. Okay, and I'll just type in a search term here. So let's say I want to find 20 images of birds near Brisbane, Australia. Okay, now just through trial and error, I've found that this location, for this Flickr module, the location really needs to be a city. It doesn't really work with anything else, like a state or a country. It tends to like having a city, so I only know that through using it. Okay, so now what I want to show you is this section down here, the debugger pane, which will be your best friend when you're building your pipes. So what this shows is the result of what the data looks like at any particular module along the chain. So when we make a more complex pipe, it's going to have multiple modules. So it's worthwhile seeing what the data looks like at each module and seeing how it modifies the information. In this case, there's only one module, so the data's not changing between the input and the output, but it still allows us to test and see that our search is actually returning results. Okay, so I'll save this pipe now, and I'll give it a name. So let's just call this Flickr test. And once I've saved it, I get a link up here to which lets me run the pipe. Okay, and there we go. So you can see here I've got, as I mentioned before, I've got 3 different methods of viewing this information. Your default is always the list. Okay, if it offers you nothing else, it will always offer you a list, which simply gives me the title, the image, and if I click on it, I imagine a link back to the photo on Flickr. Okay, and then it offers me also like an image gallery. And because it has these photos are all geotagged, it also offers me a map view. Okay, so the same information, the information looks like this. Okay, it's just a bunch of text and numbers, but visualized in 3 different ways. Okay, now it's important to understand which bits of information it uses to display various different things in that interface. So this title here is being pulled from each item's value for title down here, as you can see. So that one there is Rock Dove. This image here is actually being pulled, and you'll notice in other ones they have text here. So essentially what's displayed in this list is simply a title and a description. Just so happens that the description in this particular pipe is actually a bit of HTML which links the picture. So that's why you're seeing that little thumbnail image there, but it could just be text, in which case it would output the text. In this case here, the larger image is being drawn from this media group item here, and then media content. So if I was to grab this URL here, okay, I would find that it opens up that image. Okay, and finally the location information for the map, okay, how it knows where to place these on the map view. That is being pulled from this sub-item called y::location, which inside it has a latitude and a longitude. Okay, so we can see all the information is contained within there somewhere, and it's just being interpreted and displayed in different ways here. Okay, so I'm going to modify this pipe now a little bit to make it a bit more interactive. So at the moment, this doesn't do anything except for search for pictures of birds near Brisbane City. So what I can do is make it more flexible by adding user inputs. So you'll notice over here there's a category of modules called user inputs. Okay, and these allow me to input various different types of information: text, dates, URLs, numbers, locations. So what I'm going to do is I'll set up input fields for each of these three bits of information here. So for the number of images to search for, I'll grab a number input. For the search term, I will grab a text input. And for the location here, I'll grab a location input. Okay, so what I can do here now is grab the output from this number input, and what you'll notice is that as soon as I click this, these inputs, any of these inputs which can accept the output of this module will show up in a orange highlight. So that tells me that I can plug that in there. The search term, I'll plug that in there, and the location, I'll plug that in there. Okay, now I'll save this and I'll run the pipe again. Okay, so now you can see that it's given me 3 inputs for the location, text, and number. Now what I really want to do is, these labels don't make a whole lot of sense, so I'm going to go back in and modify something to show you how you can change what shows up here. So with each of these input modules, you'll notice you've got a name and a prompt. Now the name is simply just a unique way of identifying this programmatically, so we don't need to necessarily worry about that too much, other than it has to be unique. You'll notice that I can't put spaces in there, so it also has to be one word. The prompt is what I'm really interested in here. Whatever I put in there is what's going to show up as the label for that input field. So I can say search for this many, for the number, for the search term, I can say images of, and for the location input, I can say near. Now, the next input here, the position, simply tells it which order to show these fields in. So in my case, I want it to show up with the number, followed by the search term, followed by the location. So I'll say for the number can be position 1, search term can be position 2, and the location can be position 3. Okay, I'll save that now and run the pipe. Okay, so there we go. There's my prompt info that I put in. So now I can enter in a number. So let's search for 50. And this time we can search for whatever we want. Let's go fireworks near Paris, France. Okay, and so now we get the information based on the input that we specified there. Again, I've got the 3 different methods of displaying that information. Okay, but now I can go back and change, I can change any of this information. Okay, there we go. Question?
Can you enter more specific addresses, like street names and numbers?
As far from my trial and error, I've found that anything less specific doesn't seem to work. I'm not sure about more specific, because what you're doing then is probably relying on the fact that, like, if you do your street, the chances that someone's taken a photo in your street are a lot lower. So whether or not it's not recognizing that, or it's just not coming up with any results, I'm not sure. Yeah.
Can you do, like, from a street name, number and then in a certain, like, radius?
Look, you could if you went through the Flickr API directly, but using this module, yeah, no, you can't. I do have another example of this that actually does that, which I can link you to if you want. Yeah.
Can we do like an RSS with where is? We can put like the where is site sort of design in our site.
Not exactly sure what you mean.
Like going from a street to a location, like a where is sort of map.
Yeah. And embedding that in your prototype. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it's probably something you don't even need to use like Yahoo Pipes for to do that. And we can definitely look at specific mapping stuff in future tutorials as well. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, to answer your question, you could do much more specific stuff than this. I've just, for the purpose of keeping this example simple, just used this generic Flickr module. Yeah. Okay, now the other 2 fields that I've left here I'll explain now. What you'll notice is if I load this now by default, because I haven't hard-coded any information it doesn't come up with any search terms to begin with. If I wanted it to have default search parameters, then I could specify that here in the default text fields here. Okay, so that's now with default information entered in. So now all that is left to explain is what this debug field for is here. So with the default information, so this actually demonstrates what I was talking about before with the debug window. you'll notice down here it shows me whatever is relevant to the module that I've currently got selected. So the output of this module is simply the number 50. The output of this one is the text string bird, and the output of this one is a location that it's generated with country Australia, latitude, longitude, city Brisbane, state Queensland. Okay, so a bunch of location information. And then the output of the Flickr module is the actual search results. So this all works because I've got default information in here now, but there may be a case where you don't want this to have a default search, in which case you wouldn't have any information in this default field. But the problem with that is it's hard then to test down here with information from here. So you can see what it's doing here is, or I assume it's simply pulling a certain number of images of anything from Flickr without specifying anything here. So if I do actually want to test this functionality without setting default values, I can use the debug field instead. So I can say okay, I can put those terms in there and then hit refresh. Okay, and then I can test with the values that I want the output of this module here now, but I don't have to have it be the default search in the other interface. Okay, so it's reverted back now to having no default search. So that's the difference between the default and the debug fields. Okay, so I don't want to spend too much more time on this example because it's not that exciting. And we haven't really created much of a mashup here. We're only really grabbing information from one data source. We're just displaying it in a particular way and filtering it by particular search terms. So what I'll do is I've saved that pipe now. What I'm going to do is go back to the My Pipe section. What you'll notice here now is that pipe that I've created is shown up here. I can click on it to view what it looks like, or click View Results. I can click here always to go back and edit the source. I can delete it. I can publish it, so to make it publicly available for anyone else to use if I want. And I can clone it to make a new copy of that if for whatever reason I want to make multiple copies of the pipe. I can also star it here, so if you've got lots and lots of pipes, that will show up in the Favorites tab to make them easier to find. And that's pretty much administering your pipes there. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is create another pipe which actually truly does mash up data from two different sources. And what I'm going to do with this one is, so my scenario for this is my user wants to go and see a movie. They like their process for that is usually to check a website like Rotten Tomatoes to look for the current movies and maybe look at the reviews for that, and then they probably will go to YouTube and search for a trailer for that movie, and then using that they'll decide which film they want to go and see. So what I'm going to do is create a mashup which combines the information from Rotten Tomatoes and the YouTube trailers and put them together in one interface so that my user can get all of that without having to go to these two different websites. Now there's dozens of similar things like this already, so if I was probably going to do this from scratch, I'd probably just use someone else's, but for the purposes of demonstrating this, I'm going to create it from scratch. So the first thing to figure out is how I'm going to get my data. So we'll start with Rotten Tomatoes. So Rotten Tomatoes, if you've never heard of it, is simply a website which aggregates critiques of movies and then combines them all together, gives them a positive or negative score to determine a sort of general consensus for different films. Okay, and they call it a freshness rating. So something that's 100% fresh has all positive reviews, something that's 0% fresh has all negative reviews, and something that's 50% is half and half. Okay, so this is a good place to come to get a list of movies with some information about how they've been critically received. Now, Rotten Tomatoes has actually recently implemented an API, so you can very flexibly get any information you want out of it. But because I'm going to use the YouTube API, what I'm going to do with Rotten Tomatoes is simply use one of their RSS feeds, just so I can show you both sides of that. So usually the easiest way of figuring out if a website has an RSS feed and therefore how to access it is simply just to Google it. So I do Rotten Tomatoes RSS. Okay, and there we go. I get a web page which gives me a bunch of links to all of their RSS feeds. Okay, so they have like a news RSS feed that looks like this. And they have a bunch of feeds of lists of their different movies. So they have a complete feed, they have in theaters, top movies, opening movies, upcoming movies, a bunch of these things. Okay, so what I might do is I'm going to go for the movies that are in theaters. They're probably the ones that I'm interested in. And again, this is giving me American theaters. If I was really doing this, I'd probably use the API and specifically request information on Australian theaters, but that's okay. For the purposes of demonstrating this, we'll just ignore that. So if I click on this RSS feed, this is what it looks like. You'll notice up in the address bar here that an RSS feed is simply an XML file. It's just an XML file that's formatted in a certain way, in a standardized way, so that an RSS reader knows which parts of the XML refer to what. So what you'll see for each of these items, open these up. Okay, so for each of these items there's a, where are we here? Okay, here's my item list. Okay, so there's a bunch of items here. For each of these items, if I open those up, they contain a bunch of XML tags which contain some information. So these XML tags all have to be called this to match the RSS standard, so that every RSS reader knows that when it wants to find the date that this particular article was published, that it looks inside of the pub date XML tag, and when it wants to find the title, it looks inside the title tag. When it wants to find the description, it looks inside the description tag. Okay, and so on and so forth. So that's why we can use RSS as sort of a universal way of transferring information, is because we know that if someone's created the RSS feed correctly, that it's always going to abide by the same structure. So all I need to do to get this RSS feed into my pipe is to simply copy that URL, and in my new pipe I'm going to grab a module called fetch feed, and I'm going to paste that in there. Okay, and if I come down to my debugger view and I hit refresh, while I'm selected on the fetch feed module, okay, there I can see the same information that was in the XML file. It's just formatted a bit more nicely for me here. Okay, so I can see for each of these, items, each of these films, there it's got a publish date, a title, a link, a description, and then some other information. This might be worthwhile knowing, the tomato meter percent. So in other words, how well critically reviewed it is, and then a bunch of other information that I may or may not necessarily be interested in. Okay, but the main thing I'm interested in here is just getting, well, first of all, the list of movies. I know I've now got a list of movies that are currently in theaters. They seem to be organized by in descending order by their Rotten Tomatoes score. what I'm interested in is the title of the movie and getting the trailer of that movie from YouTube. And that's where my mashup comes in. Okay, so now the way that what I really want to do is for each of these items, I want to add some more information to this, which is a link to a YouTube video, which happens to be the trailer for that movie. Now, the way that I add extra information to an existing feed is to go down to my operators section of my modules. So the operators are all modules which will perform some sort of operation on the data. So you can see you've got things like sorting. Okay, so we could put this through here and we could say, let's sort by the title in ascending order. Okay, and it gives us a different order of the sorting. So what might actually be more useful is to sort by, let's just see, this RT movie, this one here. So now I'm sorting by item.rtmovie : tomato meter %, which is just the tag that it's calling the number, which refers to the score for this movie. So now you can see, because I'm sorting for that, it's starting off with the ones that have 0%, and as I go down, it will have the ones with better scores. So from a user perspective, there's no reason I want to do that, so I'm going to get rid of that. And I'll just leave it as its default sort order. Okay, let's see. So, all right, that's what I was saying. So, to add information, to add more information to this feed, what I want to use is the loop module. This is a really, really handy module. And what you do is you pipe an existing feed or an existing data set into the loop module, and then you drag either another module or another pipe in here, and what it will do is it will go through each item in this feed and then send that information through another pipe or another module, and then output it. And what we can do is assign the results of this nested module or pipe to the existing feed. So that will hopefully make more sense when we've actually done it and it's working. But what I need to do at this point is create another pipe which will allow me to do my YouTube trailer search. Now I can, just as a side note, if I want, you notice this little search bar up here allows you to search for any public pipes that already exist. So if I wanted to, I could probably find a YouTube search pipe that someone's already made. Once it makes up its mind. Okay, and I could just drag this in here. Okay, and if you want to do that, if you find a pipe that does exactly what you want, then that's absolutely fine. You don't have to go and reinvent the wheel. And what you'll notice is I've dragged that in there. Any pipe can actually act as its own module. I can click on open here, and it opens up that nested pipe inside of my loop module. And so you can see what this is doing is it takes a text input, which is a search term, and then somehow feeds it through a YouTube search API and then outputs the results. So once it's done that, you've got the option then to emit the results by themselves or assign them to a new item within the existing feed. Okay, but because I want to show you how to use an API like the YouTube API, I'm going to get rid of that and I'm going to create this pipe by myself. So I'll make sure this existing pipe here is saved, and I'll call this, let's call this movie trailers. Okay, and then I'm going to go back to my pipes and create a new one. So this pipe now is going to handle the searching for a movie trailer on YouTube. So what I need to know now is how I interact with the YouTube API. So after a little bit of Googling, I came across this website, which is the documentation for the YouTube API. And so this demonstrates the difference between an RSS feed and an API. So there's a lot of information in the documentation here, and that's because the API is designed so that you can create an application that interfaces with the YouTube data in any way that you want, whether you want to publish videos, search for them, modify users, anything like that. Okay, it's designed for you to be able to create an application. It's designed for you to essentially be able to replace YouTube's front end with any front end that you want, and just have a way of interfacing with their data. So it's very flexible, very powerful, and there's a lot you can do with it. But for our purposes, all we really want to do is search for the information. Now, if you look through this, you will see mention of registering for a developer key, although in my experience, having played around with this, it will let you do searches and stuff without that, so I'm not going to bother registering for a key if I don't need to. So this is essentially the page that tells me how I interact with the YouTube API. And any API, you're always going to interact with it via a URL. Okay, so this is the URL here. This is an example of a simple search. So this says here that, for example, a request to the following URL searches for the second set of 10 recently uploaded videos matching the query term football, but not matching the query term soccer. So what you can see is that you put in the URL, and then after that you have a little question mark followed by a bunch of things that we call query parameters. So a query parameter is essentially a predefined word or character which YouTube goes, okay, put this and then equals and then what you want it to equal. So in this case, the Q, if we look down in the documentation here, okay, the Q parameter specifies a search query term. So what we're saying here is, in this example, is search for this. Set the query term to be equal to, and then football minus soccer. Okay, so the very most simple example, you can ignore all of this stuff and just say if we just wanted to search for videos of football, then this bit here would be our API call. So the URL question mark Q equals football. And that's basically all we're going to do, except we're going to search for movie trailers. So if I actually put this URL into a, well, let's just do up to the query equals football. Okay, if I put this into an address bar, okay, what I get here is, you can see an XML document. Actually, let me just fix that a little. Okay, what I actually get here is an XML document, and it's not formatted very nicely, but this is essentially very similar to an RSS feed. Okay, it's an XML document which contains a bunch of information based on the search results. So as part of that, what you'll find in here is okay, a bunch of links which no doubt link to the videos that those search results have returned. Okay, so all we really need to do is take this form of the URL and put it into our Yahoo Pipes, and it will get this information for us. So what I'm going to do is just take the first part of this URL here. In fact, right here. Okay, so this is my YouTube trailer search. What I want to do is use, again, a fetch feed. Okay, and I can just paste that football search query into there, and if I refresh down here, Okay, there we go. I get a bunch of results here, which is all of the information that was contained within that XML feed. So all I really need to do to modify this is to change this to whatever I want to search for. Okay, but what I'm going to do first of all, let's just get rid of that. Let's break it down and just go back to this URL here. Because what I want to show you is a module that makes building these URLs a little bit easier. So if I look over on the left here, there's a section called URL, which has one module here called the URL builder. And what I can do here is put in the base URL. Okay, so gdata.youtube.com/feed/API/videos. And then it gives me these inputs here for specifying the query strings, and it will build the URL for me. So notice down here in the debug window what it looks like as I add more stuff to this. So the query parameter that allows me to specify my search term, as we saw, was Q, and then I simply put in the title that I want. So I haven't got this hooked up to my Rotten Tomatoes feed yet, so I'm just going to test this by hard coding in a value here. So let's just say I want to search for the Jurassic Park trailer. Alright, now see how this changes when I hit refresh. Okay, so you can see it's added the question mark for me and the Q equals and then Jurassic Park trailer, and it's also converted my spaces to plus signs, okay, because we all know that having spaces in URLs is can sometimes cause problems. So this generates me my URL, which I can then pipe straight into my fetch feed module. Okay, and there we go. I get a list of search results which are the Jurassic Park trailer. Now through trial and error, I've found that, and in terms of getting good search results, it's often about playing around with search terms. I found that if I just put the name of a movie and a trailer in, I sometimes get results that aren't quite right. So previously, when I was playing around with this Honest Trailers link came up as the first result, which is hilarious, I'm sure, but not what I was actually looking for. I'm looking for the official trailer. So just by playing around, I've found that that using the search terms, the movie title and then official, trailer, gave me the best results. So if my search term's good enough, I'm going to rely on the fact that the first result is probably the one that I want. So what I'm going to do is add another query parameter here, which just tells the YouTube API to only return one result. So as you can see from this example here, okay, we can add a query parameter called max results, which means it will only return that many results. I only really want the first one, so I'm going to specify max results as 1. Okay, and then I'll run this again. Okay, and now it just returns me the first one. Now if I go in and look at the link for this, okay, that should link me to the correct place. Okay. Alright, so now if I connect this up to the pipe output and save that, so we'll call this YouTube trailer search, or movie trailer search. There we go. Okay, let's just see what this looks like when we run it. Okay, there it is. Come up with just one item, which is fine. Click the link. Okay, it goes to there. Alright, it's good, but it's not much use to me if all it ever comes up with is the Jurassic Park trailer. So I need to modify this to allow us to specify the name of the film. So, okay, so what are we going to do here? What we need is, and actually this might be a good time to show you a couple of these buttons, which I don't think I've mentioned yet. So you'll find when you're building pipes, if you throw a bunch of modules out, they tend to get a bit messy. So you've got, what you can do is expand and contract them, but you've also got these buttons up here to expand all, collapse all, expand all, and also this layout button, which puts them in a nice row for you. So that can make it a bit easier. Okay, so, but to add the ability to specify the film here, what I'm going to do is add a user input. So let's see, a text input. Alright, and I'll call this movie title. And it's going to be the only one, so this doesn't really matter, but I'll put position 1 there anyway. And so I can test it, I'll just put Jurassic Park there as a debug value. Okay, now the problem with this is if I connect that up there, it's only going to use the search term Jurassic Park. Now that may get me the, if I do a YouTube search on that may get me the trailer, but it may not. I really want to make sure it's searching for the for the movie title followed by the term official trailer. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is go down to this string section here. And inside here there's a module called String Builder. And what that allows me to do is essentially join multiple bits of text together. So what I'm going to do is drag the user input down into here. And then I'm going to click the plus sign. And then in this second box I'm going to put space, official, trailer. Okay, so we can see the output of the string builder there is now name of the movie, official trailer. And if in my input the name of the movie changes, okay, okay, then the output of that changes as well. So we'll hook that now up to the, actually first I need to break that off. We'll hook that up to the input for the query string for the YouTube search. Okay, and so now, alright, this will search for whatever we've entered as the input, followed by official trailer, and will hopefully return us the results. Okay, so we can change this to any movie we want, and hopefully, okay, we get a different result. So now we have a pipe which allows us to input a movie title and it will output a single YouTube video containing the trailer to that film. So I'll say this again, and all that we have to do now is connect up our first pipe to our second pipe. So I'll go back to my pipes, and we'll go back into the movie trailers pipe and edit the source. Okay, so now what I want to do is with this loop module here, I want to grab my YouTube trailer search pipe and put that inside of here. So the way I do that is I look on the left hand side here and there is a category called My Pipes. So any pipes that I've created will show up here, and I can drag any of those out and place them into the loop module. So I'm interested in this YouTube movie trailers module, which can go right there. Okay, and then I can open up that and view that anytime I want. Okay, and so this here indicates that this is inside of that pipe. And what I need to do here is basically I need to tell it what part of the original feed do I want to send through to this YouTube trailer search to act as this text input. And what I want to send through there is the item title. Okay, so there it is there, item title. So what that will do now is go through each of these and send each of these item titles through to the YouTube movie trailer search and then output them in one of two ways. It will either output the YouTube results by themselves if I specify emit all results. Okay, and you'll actually notice that this is taking quite a long time. And the reason for that is in this list there's over 100 different films, so it's actually having to make 100 separate requests to this YouTube movie trailer search pipe. So what I might do just to speed up the testing is before I get to the loop module, I'll grab under operators the truncate module here. And what I'll do is I'll put that feed through there, and what I'm going to say is truncate the feed after 20 items. So then we only have now the first 20 items in the feed. It just gets rid of the rest of them. So I can remove that later on if I want, but for the purposes of testing, this will just should make this work a little faster. Okay, there we go. So what we've got now is we've set it to emit all of the results from this YouTube movie search. So what you'll find is that all of these items now, all of the items from the original feed have been discarded and they've been replaced by the results from the YouTube movie trailer search pipe. It's not actually what I want to happen because I want to retain the information, the description, and the rating from the original feed. So what I want to do instead is I'll assign the results from the YouTube trailer search to a sub-item within each of these RSS feed items from Rotten Tomatoes. So because I only have one result returning from the YouTube movie trailer search, I can just say assign the first result, and then I can either use this default long name here, or I can specify my own item name to assign this to. So I'm going to say assign this to item.trailer. Now this is, when I'm saying item.trailer here, this is common dot syntax notation for specifying an object and then a child object. So item refers to this. So if this is an item, then that ID is item.id, published is item.publish, title is item.title. Okay, so I want to assign the video results to item dot, let's say, trailer. Okay, and now the result of this loop pipe should be, okay, we have now an item here which wasn't in the original Rotten Tomatoes RSS feed. So we've got item.trailer, and that contains all of the information that was returned from that one YouTube video search result. Okay, and because it's in a loop module, that should have been applied to each and every one of these movie items. Okay, so we can see all of these all have a trailer. Okay. Now, I have noticed that due to an unfortunate side effect of the way that Rotten Tomatoes has formatted their RSS feed, this doesn't actually show up with particularly relevant results all the time. You'll notice this third one here. the YouTube result that it links to comes up with something that is not related to that film. Now I've determined that the reason for this is, you'll notice what we're feeding through to this YouTube trailer here is the item.title. Now the title contains the name of the film, but they've also unfortunately put the Rotten Tomatoes score at the beginning of the title as well. Now if this is a well-designed feed, they probably shouldn't have done that, and this wouldn't be an issue. But because this is here, it gives me the opportunity to show you another module as well. So what I'll show you now is a module that actually allows you to modify the information within the feed if it's not quite exactly how you want it to be. And the module I'm going to use for this is under operators. It's called the regex module, short for regular expression. It's probably one of the more trickier modules that Yahoo Pipes has, and as I said, hopefully if you've got well-designed data and feeds, you won't have to use it. People have written entire books about regular expressions, so I'm obviously not going to attempt to teach you everything there is to know about that, but I'll just show you what I'm doing and I'll try my best to explain it. But in essence, a regular expression is, if you've ever done any kind of a search and you've typed in text and then used like an asterisk to represent any other characters, or like a question mark to represent a single character. Okay, what you've done then is you've used a regular expression. But there are other regular expressions that you can use which represent trying to match lots of different kinds of characters. So I might just do this and then attempt to explain it, and hopefully it makes sense. So what I'm going to do is send my feed after I've truncated it through into the regex module. Okay, and then first of all I have to choose which bit of information it is that I want to modify. In this case I want to modify the title, and what I want to do is essentially get rid of the score and then just keep the rest of the title. So I'm going to say use item.title, and then I say replace part of it with something else. And in this case I want to write a regular expression which says replace those characters up to there with nothing, and then just keep the rest of the title. So the way I'm going to do that is using this regular expression. So I'm going to use this symbol here, this caret symbol, which represents the start of a new line. And then I'm going to use \d, which represents any numerical character, any digit. And then I'm going to use the asterisk symbol, which says, okay, find any numerical digits and then any number of them. Then I'm going to use the percentage sign, which simply just represents the percentage sign. So far I've said, look at the beginning of the line, find any variable number of digits, because there may be one digit there may be two, or there may be three. Find any of those digits up until a percentage sign, and then finally find after that a space character. And a space character I represent by saying \s. Okay, so you probably just have to, unless you're really down with regular expressions, you probably just have to take my word for it that set of regular expressions will match any of these combinations of numbers followed by a percentage sign followed by a space character. If you want to read up on regular expressions, again, you can look at the examples and the documentation on this module, or you can just Google looking at regular expressions. They actually come in really handy for searching through text in general a lot. So that should find that set of characters, and then I have to tell it what I want to replace it with. In this case I want to replace it with nothing, so I'm just going to leave that blank. And then you finally got some other options here. which again I won't bore you to death with what they all do. And in actuality, I shouldn't have to. I shouldn't actually have to have any of these ticked for this to work. But I believe there to be a bug in how they've implemented their regex module, which means that I just have to have this ticked. But anyway, once I've got that done, what you should see now when I refresh this, if I've done it correctly, hopefully, is the title. So the title here, and then therefore also here, because that just reads off the title here, should now just have, in this case, just Sound City without the 100% followed by the space. Okay, and there we go. And it's applied to all of these down here like this. So I could replace this with any text I want. So I could replace it with the text hi. All right, and you'll notice that, okay, hi gets added, replaced at the beginning where that number was all along there. Okay, but in this case, I'm simply just replacing it with nothing. Okay, so now my title does purely just represent the title of the film. I still have the score down here if I really want it, but now I should be able to pipe this through to the trailer, to the loop with the YouTube trailer search, and based on the output of that, okay, I should now see, so this one which wasn't previously returning a correct result, the trailer now seems to be returning the correct video. Okay, so if that made absolutely no sense at all, don't worry too much about that. As I said, it's just an anomaly of this particular feed that I actually had to use that. And if you ever come across this and you need to do this, I'm more than willing to help you out with figuring out how to do that as well. But anyway, this now is our almost complete mashup. So we'll save that and we'll see what the final output looks like. So I'm going to run this pipe after saving it. Okay, and here's my list of films. Okay, so now the only thing that's still wrong with this is if I click on any of these, there's nowhere there that allows me to access the movie trailer, which was actually the whole point of creating this mashup. All these links are still linking back to the Rotten Tomatoes page for these particular films. So the way we fix that is to come back to our editor window, and I'm going to look at one more operator module called rename. So I'm going to drag that out there, and I'm going to feed the results of my loop module with my YouTube trailers added to them into the rename module. And so just to again reiterate, the reason why it was still linking to the Rotten Tomatoes page is because it's using Yahoo Pipes. That interface is looking for a property called link inside of each item in order to set the href of that particular link. What we really want it to do is use the link that's inside of our trailer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace what's in this link here with what's in the trailer link down here. And I can do that using the rename module, which you can use to either rename or copy. In this case, I'm going to rename, and I'll say item.trailer.link. Okay, so that should be the YouTube link. There's item, there's trailer, there's link. Rename that to simply item.link. Okay, and that should replace item link here. So the Rotten Tomatoes URL should be replaced by the YouTube URL. I refresh that. With a bit of luck. Right. might have done it the wrong way. Let me just check. Oh, sorry. I don't need an item there. For whatever reason, I just need a link. Okay, there we go. So there's my link now there. My link within the item has been replaced with the link that was in the trailer, which is somewhere there. Okay, it looks like it's removed it from there, which is fine, I don't really mind, and placed it up here. Okay, so I'll connect that back up. Layout, save that. And one last time, run this. Okay, let's see. Okay, so this demonstrates a minor annoyance with Yahoo Pipes. You'll notice even though I've updated it, the front end seems to be using an older version, and that will happen sometimes just because of the way that they do their caching. The quickest solution I've found to getting around this is to simply save a copy of your pipe, so it creates a brand new pipe based on what you already have, and then run that, and then there should be no caching issues, and it should work, I think. Just got to find a movie that I actually know. Let's try that one. Okay, so now our links, rather than linking back to Rotten Tomatoes, they link to the YouTube trailers. Yeah, that looks correct. There's another one. Okay. So this one's interesting in that I actually did find the 2013 version of the trailer instead of the original one, so that's kind of good. Okay, so that is our mashup. So what we've done is we've taken a RSS feed from Rotten Tomatoes, we've fed the titles of those movies into a pipe which did a YouTube trailer search, and then attached them to the feed, and then output them so that we're using the YouTube video link when we click on the item. So now we've essentially got the content of two websites in one. I can come to here, get a list of the current movies in theaters, and then click on them and very quickly get to the trailers for all of them. Okay, so that is pretty much all I wanted to cover today. Are there any questions anyone has that I can clarify about anything I've gone over? Obviously, as I said, I've sort of gone over this in a fairly linear fashion. My intention here was to show you the kinds of things that it can do. I would suggest just getting in and playing around with it, trying to create some pipes, having a look at existing pipes, reading some of the documentation and the tutorials, and then I think that will give you a broader understanding of how all this stuff kind of works.